Hi, my name's Jeff Rhodes, and this is another video about Office 365 based on my book, Creating Business Applications with Office 365 Techniques in SharePoint, PowerApps, Power BI, and more. And today we're talking PowerApps and a little bit of SharePoint, and we'll actually talk some Power Automate, which have flows in it. So there's the book. It's up on Amazon. You can see I've went down to see where it's doing, number 14 in SharePoint books right now, so I appreciate that, but you can get it up there and other resellers as well, so sure appreciate you doing that. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to jump right to SharePoint, and this is our data source, and I did another video previously on how this application worked and so forth, and I covered it in the book also as well, the first two apps related to it. So main thing I want to show you is if you look at this roll up here, you know, we're coming up in about 3,000 tickets. And so the max that you can read in one time is, by default, it's 500 tickets. And even if you bump it up, you can get up to 2,000 right now, but you can't get beyond that. So this is a technique that my colleague Anthony Apodaca found online and then implemented. And I basically just copied his code into my app, which was very helpful. One thing while we're in SharePoint, one of the techniques is we're going to need a numeric column to filter on. And even though the ID, if you look at this ID, it's numeric, but it doesn't show up as numeric in essence. So we go in and he made a column here and call it ID numeric there, and it's a number column. And then we'll use a flow to copy that. And we'll end up by showing you how to build a flow like that. So let's go look at the app. I think I have it open over here, but I'm going to close it and we'll fire it up again and just demonstrate it. Like I said, there's a whole separate last video in my feed in the channel on how to build this. Notice what it's doing right now is it's loading up all these tickets. So that's the technique we're going to show you. And eventually you'll see we actually implement this with a button that's like located right here, but notice how it's hidden right now. When we get over to the edit mode, I've made that visible. But what we're getting at is I can come in and view my tickets, and then I can click this button and get my resolved tickets, and I can sort them by date, you know, so has you know, all the tickets that have ever been done. Now, more importantly, for the functionality of having to get all the tickets is when I do new tickets. So I can come over here and put in some info. I'll put it to this support group, test, ignore. And I can put an attachment and so forth. I've shown you that. And I submit the ticket. Now, one of the challenges is we put that in with the patch function. We covered that in the other video. And then we go back to this first screen and I go ahead and show this box, because right now I'm waiting for the flow to actually kick off. And that's an undetermined amount of time. And then I want to refresh my data source, because what I'd really like is for that new ticket to show up. That gives you a warm fuzzy. But because it may not happen right away, that's what we made to say you may need to refresh several times. But I kind of game it a little bit, and I'm buying time here while they read this message and kind of think about it or whatever. And then when I hit continue, that's when you'll see I get the little dots going around. So it's now reloading the code, and that's what we're gonna show you in a second, the code for doing that. So I'm refreshing the data source and then reloading the collection through there. So we'll just let that run for a second. You see it's, you know, takes a second to do. And this is one where we're doing, you know, speed is more important than that. So I'm going to get rid of the resolve tickets, and you see that's the one I just did. So I talked for long enough that it's in there, and I could look at my data and so forth. And then more importantly, I can check back now and watch this ticket, and as there's notes, I can read the notes, and then I'll get an email, you know, saying that it's been closed and so forth. So all right, so let's go back over to the development environment, and you'll see I have this button called load collection that that I'm used for all this code. And it's a bit of a hack. As I mentioned in my last one, it'd be nice if we had like a module or a class library where we could put this code. But since we don't have it now, I just put it all on a button, and then what happens on the visible, I'll zoom in there for a minute. So what happens is this show new record message is a variable that when I'm on the new ticket screen, I go ahead and set that to true and then come back. And so if this is true, then I don't do anything. Otherwise, which is the default when I'm opening it up, and I set it even on app start to false, then I call this button. So I'll basically will call that. Similarly, if I hit the refresh button over here, I call this button. So excellent. So the key to the code here is going to be these collections. So I don't know if you know how to get to collections, but just in case not, we're going to come over here and go to collections. And this collection one's not used, but what we're going to read is this user tickets collection. So that one, it only shows me the first 5 items, but it's the 3,000 records that I'm trying to get them all in there. And then our code that we're going to covers some of these. So I'll come back to them as we go through the code and kind of step it as we go along. So let me go here and make this bigger. So first thing I want to note is this article. So that's where Anthony found it. It's over here. So this Mr. Dang from Microsoft came up with that, and we appreciate it, and gave some of this code here. And you can see it hopefully in the video. Building PowerApps 500 item limit in CDM. So you should be able to find it, or you can hopefully just type all that in. And then there's Anthony who came up with all that. So main thing I added here is I'm refreshing my data source. So that's so that when I don't have to have a separate refresh statement, I just went ahead and put it in here. Even though when we load it the first time, it could be a little bit longer because it basically is loading it and refreshing it all at the same time. But then we clear all our variables, and then, like I said, I can spend a tremendous amount of time in here, but it'll give you the gist of it. So you can see it's got some nice comments. We can go up to 2 million records. And in essence, what we're doing is we're going to put them in sets of 10. So there's 2,000 in each, 10 of those. That's where you get the 2 million that it can cover. So we're just doing a clear collect. The first parameter is the table that we want. And this is, the value. So I'm just putting a comma delimited list of in there. And then, and by the way, I highly encourage, you might see I've got the documentation just so you see it. So if you want to go to for all, you can decide to see, let me find where so for all is a table and then the formula. So that's what we're doing a bunch of here. So let me zoom in so we can get it a little better. So in essence, what we're doing is, we're going to go through each of those 10. Okay, so that's what's going, and we're going to go through them again, and we're basically, this call dummy is we're putting the number 1 in, and eventually we're trying to count the number of rows. So when we come all the way through it, we're looking for how many rows are we putting in each of those set of 10 as we need it going through. And then, so another way of saying the previous one is we're just basically doing placeholders to hold all our data. And then we're going to go ahead and figure out, and notice I'm using ID here. I could use ID numeric because those are the same. But we're saying, okay, give me the first record. I'm going to have a context variable, which means it's valid for the screen that I'm on. And I'm going to get the first record, and then I'm going to sort them ascending. Okay, so that's going to start with 1 or whatever the first number is. And then I'm going to do the last record, and I'm going to sort descending. So maybe I think we'll see later the last record is actually number 4005 because we deleted records along the way. So even though there's only 3,000 total records, its actual ID is 4005. And then, oops, hit the wrong button there. We're going to do another context variable called iterations here. And we're just going to take the ID and, of the last record minus the first record divided by 2,000. So notice that if we never deleted any records, then they'd all be full. Each one would have 2,000 in them. Here we're just kind of saying, okay, we're going to give space for, so we're 4,000 and something minus, I think the first one is 6. We'll look at it in a second. And then, that basically gives us 3 sections that we need, 3 groupings. But each one won't necessarily have all of 2,000, but it won't be any more than 2,000. All right, so let's see what we've done so far. So we've got our call dummy we've covered. Start from our call temp and our call num temp. So let's go over to collections and just see what we've done. So our call numbers. Oh, actually the call num temp we did, which is 1 through 10. Our call numbers as well for the first 5 ends up looking that as well. And then the call dummies are just basically putting 1 into each one of our rows. So we've done that so far. So nothing too exciting, but it's just basically giving us variables to keep track of where we are and start filling things in. And we don't see them yet, but we've got these variables, the number of iterations, and we've made it, the first number. So we've got the first record, last record, and we got our number of iterations, which will be 3 in our case. All right, so let's zoom in a little bit more. All right, so what we're going to do is we're basically going to use this counter to get our IDs of the, the records for each one. So we're going to start. So first record.id is 6, and we're going to call it the min num. And then we're going to go through. Let's zoom down a little bit. So we're going to, again, the for all, the first parameter is the table. So we're going to filter our call number table so our number is less than or equal to the iterations. Okay, so we're basically going to, take the first section, and then iterations is going to be 1 right now. Or no, it's less than or equal to 3 because that's how many iterations we're going to do. And then we're going to collect. So this is a new collection call iterations, and we're going to get, so we're basically going to determine the number, how many are in there, and what's its minimum and what's its maximum. And we'll look at that in just a second. And then after we do it, notice that this is key, notice this semicolon. So after we do it, we're going to do the patch. And you might remember in the last video, we used patch to add a new record, but we can also use patch just to update a value. So we're going to update our var counter, and we're going to basically increment up the next one. So after we've done 1, we're going to add to the count rows by 1, and we're going to basically go to the next set of groupings and go through it. So let's go back and look. So this is pretty key, the call iteration. So let's go back. So, and I said it was going to be 3. It looks like it was actually only 2 that it needed. So anyway, you can see the first one is 1. So the max number is 2005, and the min number is 6. And then the min number after we increment is 2006 to 4005. So we just barely did it within 2 iterations instead of 3. But now we've got everything we need because we know the actual ID numbers of what we need to read to put into each one. So we're getting pretty close. And got some nice comments there. So we finally go back in. So we're going to for all, so that'll give us, since we only have 2 rows, it'll do each one at once. Collect, so this is our collection that we actually want. This is the one that we're going to bind to our gallery, user ticket collection. And we're going to filter. So we're going to filter our data source so that remember our numeric column is less than or equal to min num, and less than or greater than or equal to min num, and less than or equal to max num. And then that was one Anthony did. Then I added this filter as well so that we can limit it to just my own records. And so one of our columns is that user Office 365. That's the column in the SharePoint list. And then we get its email. That's a person column, its email property, and we have a current email variable that we set. And let's go back and see it. So that's it. Come back to the collection. So there's that user ticket. So again, they're only showing us 5, but these are all my own tickets. I don't know if we can see it over there. Let's see if we can. So you notice I get the entire column. Yeah, there's you can't really tell the type of it, but it's got that in there. So, that's the actual person column there. So excellent. And if we go back, let me close this in. There we go. I'm having a little trouble pulling it up there. There we go. Let's see if, there we go. Made it a little smaller. So if I grab this gallery, if you look at the items, it's got a big long filter on it. But what we're filtering on is that user ticket collection. So a little complicated, but if you copy that code in, you can kind of get, from the article, and you can go and adapt that. And it, as we saw earlier, it does work and gives you all your records. So let's end up by going into Flow, which I've come over here, and I'll just give you the gist on how you would set that up. So let's say we wanted to do create it automated from blank, and yeah, I was going to search, but you can see I've got one there when an item is created. So we'll just say update ID numeric, something like that. Like I said, this one's already here, but I just wanted to build one from scratch. So I can say create. I don't need this box. So I'll pick my site, pick my list, then I'll do a new step. And I want to do SharePoint. And I'll just search for item. So I can say update item. So again, I pick the same list that I already have. And then the ID is the ID that I already had. And I can just come up over here and go to my ID numeric and pick the ID and then save it. So that's the gist of it, so that every time I create it, I update that one column. And if I publish that, then I could go in and have that run. And so that's the one that happens every time we add a new ticket. It goes over, and it does have to wait. You can't really control how long that takes, but hopefully not very long. So I hope that was helpful. Again, not code that I wrote, just one I wanted to tell you about. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you can, if you haven't picked up the book. Appreciate you doing that, and hope you have a great day. Thank you.